Hey everyone, my name is Chris. This video is about the admin settings of GA4 and how you can set those up properly. Now, I will admit, this is not the most exciting facet of Google Analytics 4. However, it is critical to make sure that you are tracking all of your events and all of your data in Google Analytics 4 accurately from the start. So let's start off with a few caveats and a few notes before we jump into the actual admin portion of GA4. The first thing I wanted to talk about is that I do have a sample use case. So one of my clients was sweet enough to provide permission to me to allow me to show you some things. So we're going to walk through that exact use case. That is a sample use case though. So just know that your settings might be a little bit different. This is only a foundational layer. So we are going to just update the settings. There's many more things to do in terms of configuring Google Analytics 4 properly, including conversion setup, custom event tracking, updates to channels, possibly channel definitions, reporting layouts, the list goes on. But this is just the foundational layer that's, again, very critical to make sure that we're tracking things accurately in your GA4 property. Every measurement program is different, as I noted. We're going to walk through a sample use case. Don't feel the need to copy exactly what I'm doing in this particular example, but some of this will hopefully be very helpful for you in terms of determining how best to track your particular unique measurement program. And then just know that available or settings that we will see may change. I've made the example before with some folks that I work with. If Google Analytics is a moving car at 55 miles an hour down the road, Google is trying to change the tires on the thing in real time. So there are constantly updates to the system, to the settings, to the layout, to the visualization, so expect things to change. Last note for you here is that I do have some sample documentation and a mantra that I think we should all really abide by with respect to setting up and configuring Google Analytics 4 is if we do not write it down, it does not exist. So I would absolutely recommend that we have a blueprint. We follow that blueprint and we write everything down so we as an organization know exactly how things are configured, what settings we're utilizing, etc. So here is the example Google Sheet. So if you again go to teach2fishdigital.com/GA4, this will redirect you to this sheet, and I'll put the link there in the description of this video for you. There are a number of different tabs in this sheet. This first one that we're going to walk through today is the config audit. And so this is essentially a checklist of all the different things that we will want to update in Google Analytics 4. There are also some other sheets in here. There's for example, a how to use this document. Make sure to check this out if you'd like to. One thing you'll notice if you go to the link straight away is you can't edit this. I basically shut it down so only I can edit it. However, if you go File and then make a copy, now it's your baby and you can do whatever you want. And I've done exactly that in this example here for the sample account that we're going to look at. Okay, so you'll note that we have several components in this list. Each component is a setting or a little update we're going to make in the GA4 admin section. The location column will provide a little marker for where you need to go to update these settings. For example, this enhanced measurement setting right here, this component, the location it says admin, property, data streams, enhanced measurement. Look for the cog icon. If we go to the property, and if we're in admin, here's our property, data streams, select our data stream, enhanced measurement, look for the cog icon. So I've tried to give you a little bit of wayfinding tools here so you know exactly where to go. And we're going to walk through every single one of these in this video, so don't fret. There's also a little description. We've got our status. At the end of this video, we hope to have all of these status updates totally in the green here and not incomplete or partial or whatever the value is. And we're going to walk through. I've also added some notes here just for this particular use case that will come into play here in a little bit. All right, so the first step is, do we have a web stream? Do we have a GA4 property? If you do not, and if you have Universal Analytics And if you've got the ability from a user standpoint or an access standpoint to create a property, this button right here will be blue for you, and you can actually create a property, hit this button, and put all your information in terms of the name of the website that you're tracking, your time zone, what kind of business you're operating, etc. I've already taken that step for this particular instance. So this status right here is green. It's fairly simple to kind of walk through this property, or walk through this create a property steps, and just give the GA4 admin your website address, the name of your website, property, etc., etc. Now, data streams are very important because they are essentially replacing views. So you might remember previously with Universal Analytics, we had accounts, properties, and views. Back in GA4, views are gone. They've actually been replaced with data streams. And if you have a website, you will want to create a web stream. So if you want to add a stream, you can always go web stream. Now, important, we've already got a web stream in here. So that's been given this, here's the tracking code for that right here. I don't need to do that. Typically, if you have a singular website, you need a web stream. I don't see a situation where you would need multiple web streams within this property. You can create multiple web streams, but they're all going to feed the reports in the same spot. So it's typically you have one web stream to capture your data for a site or collection of sites that you want to track. Okay, we'll get into cross-domain tracking here in a second. The first thing we need to do though is if we jump into this web stream, it gives us a little measurement ID, and you'll see some view tag instructions. So basically we need to make sure this tag or this tracking code is placed on our website. And this particular site uses Google Tag Manager. So I'm going to copy this ID, which is the same ID you see here. I'm going to go to the Google Tag Manager instance for this particular company. And so you can see they've got a ton of tags in here already. It looks like they're doing some event tracking in Universal Analytics, and they've got a part out listener and things like that. If I want to add a new tag, I'll go add new. I'm going to call this my GA4 web stream tag. I'm actually going to put it in a folder just to keep everything organized. We don't have any folders yet, so I'm going to create one. Call it GA4. Here we go. So that'll be in the GA4 folder. And every tag that I add later on for GA4 can also go in this folder to keep everything tidy and organized. Now, as you open this up, we want to place a GA4 configuration tag. The one time you'll place this is when you pop in the tracking code here. So there's my measurement ID, the same measurement ID that I grabbed from my property or my data stream. You pop that in to let Google know, hey, when this tag fires, send data to this property, send data to this web stream. Okay. There are some other settings that we won't necessarily walk through in this video, but just know that you can update some settings related to fields. For example, one field would be like content group. If you ever want to go to that, we won't set that up today, especially because I can't even spell it properly. But let's remove that. There's some user properties you might want to add. So there's some other options here, but we're just going to do the basic setup for now. This is essentially our page view tag in GA4. When this fires, session start, page view, all the native events or the events that are automatically firing from GA4 will fire. And so we want to make sure this fires on every single page. So the trigger I'm going to use, or the instructions for this tag, are send data to this measurement ID every single time a page is opened by a visitor. I'm going to save this. I'm actually going to publish it right now. Typically what we would do is actually preview it to make sure everything's firing. We're not going to do that in this step. We're just going to publish it. Once that's published, we can now collect data in GA4, and we can also check this box right here. Okay? And I'm going to add a little note, and I'm off and running. Now the next piece, I alluded to this earlier, but we want to check our enhanced measurement setting. What's that? Down here, you can look at enhanced measurement, and it said in the navigation notes or the location reference, look for the cog icon, and I see that cog icon right here. So these are the events that are automatically tracking in GA4 as soon as we turn this on, right? As soon as we activate our property. Page views are going to automatically track. Scroll will track, but only to the 90th percentile. For this particular instance, I'm actually going to disable this because later on, I'm going to add my own scroll tracking that's custom for this client, for this particular account, through Google Tag Manager. You might not want to disable this. You might want to keep this on, but I'm going to add my own later on, my own scroll tracking, so I can track not just to the 90th percentile, but to the 25th, 50th, 75th percentile as the visitor scrolls down the page. Outbound clicks, yeah, I want to track that. Site search, for sure. Let's take a look at those settings. Google has identified some query parameters here that are typical. If you conduct a site search on your website and discover that your search term, query parameter, or whatever the parameter looks like is there, and it'll give you a little description about what this is. If it's different from one of these here, you can always type it in here. So let's say the parameter is term, T-E-R-M, I can add it. I can make sure that that happens, okay? So I'm just gonna keep this on here. Form interactions. Google Analytics 4 will track form starts when the visitor starts to interact with a form, and form submits automatically. The problem that I have found is that sometimes Google Analytics 4 has a tough time identifying actual form submits versus a feature that might load in your navigation, or a chatbot, or something like that might look like a form submission to Google Analytics 4, but it's really not. So I end up getting a lot of false positives. So I'm actually going to disable this. So far I've got everything enabled except for scroll and form interactions. Yes, I want to track video, and yes, I want to track all my file downloads. But the point here is you can update this however you'd like, and to make sure that you're tracking specific to you, so that over time, the more that you customize this, we're getting away from a point where it's not Google Analytics, it's your brand here analytics. So as much as you can customize it, the better, in my opinion. Okay, so we're good on this. I'm going to go back to my checklist and note that we disabled form submit and scroll, and we're complete here. Okay, the next piece is we're going to go admin property data streams. We're there now, and then go to configure tag settings and configure domain. So let's do that. So here I am. If I scroll down, there's configure tag settings right there. I'm going to click into that. Now, one little UX issue or user experience issue I find, and there's a ton of them in GA4, you'll find them all over the place, is that there's all kinds of settings in here. There's a number of settings in here. I don't know why they just show the 3, but if I say show all, I'm probably going to touch a few of these. Now, the one I'm looking for is configure your domains. Great, let's go there. There's configure your domains. I'm going to select that. Here's where we identify for Google what our domain is, so they know what to track and what not to track. Now, if we've got more than one domain, so for example, we've got www.example.org, we can add it here. If we also have a subdomain that we want to track from a cross-domain tracking perspective, like blog.example.org or shop.example.org, we can track all of those here and list them here. This particular site has 2, so I'm going to grab the first, add a condition. The domain contains the www. I'm also going to get this subdomain here and add it, and I'm going to hit save. Now, once I've got that in, what I've basically got going on is cross-domain tracking. So as the visitor navigates from the primary domain to the subdomain, it looks like one continuous experience as we look at this. So if someone comes in from Google or from a LinkedIn ad to the primary and then navigates to the subdomain, the traffic source to the subdomain will be LinkedIn or Google or whatever the original source was when they came to the primary domain. If we don't create this, the primary, or if we don't configure cross-domain tracking, and someone comes from LinkedIn to the primary and they navigate to the subdomain, the source to the subdomain will look like the primary, and we want this to look like one continuous experience. So it's important to list all the different subdomains. Now, you might just have one, so you're good. So you don't need to really do anything there, but that'll be important, okay? So make sure that you've got that. As you've noted, if you've ever done cross-domain tracking before, you'll note that this is very easy compared to what we had before in universal analytics. So I'm just going to say see domain list below, and look at us, we've got green all over the place already. Internal traffic, let's go there now. So if I go back here, define internal traffic, there we go. So I'm going to go here, and this is where we can identify for Google our own IP addresses, okay? And so it's important to make sure that we're not tracking ourselves or our internal people amongst our audience metrics and behaviors. So if we want to remove ourselves from tracking, we can do that here. If we hit create, we can create a little group, okay? And that group I'm going to call internal traffic, something generic, and then we can identify what our IP addresses are. Now, if you ever want to find your IP address, you can go to Google and search what is my IP address. They've also given you a nice link right here that'll show you my IP address in beautiful Mesa, Arizona. Okay, so there you go. So you'll want to capture this while you're at the place, whether it's your home office or your office, your actual office, to get that number. And that number, which I'm going to grab here, will make sure that Google does not track us amongst our reporting audience. So there are some conditions here. Check these. I'm just going to use the simple IP address equals, but there are other operators here you'll see. And I'm going to paste that in. I can also add another condition for the second IP address. I wanted to note also that this setting got really weird right around March 2020 when the world ended for COVID, etc. So when we all started working from home, this got difficult. Before maybe a lot of us worked from an office, it was easy because we could just exclude our office IP address. If you work from home, or if you've got a number of people that work from home, or several locations across the country, across the world, you'll probably want to figure out a way to remove every one of those folks from in this setting. Now, that could be a daunting task for some of you. And what I would say is use your best judgment. In this little group called internal traffic here, I've added 2 IP addresses per group. So here's group number 1. I can add up to 10, I believe. Once you've reached 10 and you've still got more IP addresses to add, you can create another group. Okay, so you can I have not found a limit to the number of groups you can create. The limit to the number of IP addresses you can add per group is 10 so far. That might change, right? These settings might change by Google, might be changed by Google. Okay, so again, use your best judgment there. You really want to primarily omit traffic and tracking for people that are on the website, your website, from your internal company or your internal organization. Those folks that are on the website all the time. Let's remove those folks. Maybe we don't need to remove everybody in the organization though. Okay, so we've got that. Complete. See IP address list below. I do think it's very important to keep notes and next steps. Again, if we do not write it down, it doesn't exist. We're done with that one. The next piece is the list unwanted referrals. That's really the same thing as our domains. So in order to make sure that we're doing cross-domain tracking, we can really make sure that we don't have any domains that include one of these 2. There is a common element here, so I'm just going to say that we grab this. I can list them both as I did before, but I want to make sure that we don't have anybody with that particular domain for this business. So basically this is saying I cannot have a referral from myself. Would that happen often? Probably not, but this is almost like a little insurance policy to make sure that we're not tracking ourselves as a referral source to ourselves, if that makes sense. Okay, so that is an important step I would do. Look at us, we're making our way through this checklist. I'm just gonna make a quick note here. And the next place is adjust session timeout. Okay, so here we are right there, adjust session timeout. Now there are other settings in here that we won't touch just because I feel we don't need to, but these are primarily the settings that I would adjust if I were you. So we're gonna jump in here. There's a couple things going on here. The first is session timeout. What's that mean? A session is the amount of time that someone spends on your website. And the default is 30 minutes. So if you suspect that your average visitor will be on the website for more than 30 minutes, and I say average visitor, your typical visitor will be on the site for more than 30 minutes, you probably need to change this to maybe an hour or 2 hours or whatever. The only time I've ever changed this, by the way, is when I was working for an insurance company, and they had this gargantuan application form that took 45 minutes to complete, so we changed the limit there. Now, if someone is on our website for 31 minutes, it'll look like 2 sessions, one 30-minute session and another minute session, okay? So that's how that works. For this particular instance, they're not going to be there longer than 30 minutes, so I'm going to keep the default here. This setting down here for engage sessions is all about the user engagement event. The user engagement event will fire when someone is on the site or on a page rather, for 10 seconds. I can also change this to 30 seconds or 20 seconds. I don't know that this particular brand is going to rely upon the user engagement metric, but if we all agree that, you know what, in order for them to really count as an engaged visit, they have to be here for at least 30 seconds, I can update that. You do not have to update this. You can keep it as the default or change it to a minute, but this is going to basically provide the criteria to determine what an engaged session is, because the user engagement event will appear in your list of events, just like page view, just like session start, just like first user. It is a default event, so you can change that if you want. I'm going to, just for this use case, more often than not, I actually keep it at 10 seconds just because I don't use that metric so much, but I wanted to kind of show you an example there. Updated engaged session. Okay, at this point we are done in the configure tag settings area, and we're going to back out. Okay, so let's go back, let's jump out of here, zoom out just a little bit so we can see where we're at. This view tag instructions will go away when Google realizes that I published this. There is about a 24-hour latency, by the way, for data that comes through to GA4, just know that. The next area is property, data settings, and data collection. Let's go there. Data settings, data collection. Okay, so this is basically allowing you to collect demographic reports. Within reports, you will see, and it's going to be blank for this particular instance, but you will see demographics. And in demographics, you'll be able to gather detail about user age, user interests, gender, those types of things. And all of this data is actually coming from Google Signals. And Google Signals are a feature that basically allow us as Google users to say, hey Google, yes, you can utilize my information and track it. In order for this information to be tracked from a demographic standpoint, again, it's interest, age, and gender. I, as a Google user, have to give permission to Google to log that information, and I also have to be logged into Google. Okay, so if we want to bring that demographic data in, if we want to populate our demographic reports, Google is putting the onus on the analytics admin, me in this case. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, I don't want to be, but if you have a privacy policy on your website, like pretty much every website on the internet does, that says we track, we use analytics, we use cookies, you're pretty much good to activate this, but I would check with your legal counsel, just being the responsible person that you are. But I'm going to activate this right now. I'm going to continue, turn on Google Signals and activate it. Again, this will activate our demographics reports so we can gather that information. I'm also going to scroll down to the bottom of this page here in data collection, and then I'm going to acknowledge the data collection. Again, Google's putting the onus on the account administrators to check these boxes, thus taking the legal responsibility off of Google. So there you go. And now we're going to go here, and we're going to say this was activated, and we're going to complete this step. Okay, here we go. Data retention. This is a big one. If we go here, it's also under data settings. The default is 2 months. I want to change the amount of time that Google is storing this data to, well, I guess I only have one option, 14 months. What does this mean? This means that Google will store up to 14 months worth of data. If I kept it here and I wanted to do a year-over-year analysis, I wouldn't be able to. I would only be able to do a month-over-month or 2 month analysis. Okay, so to clarify, if you, when Google Analytics 4 came out in October 2020, if you turned everything on, you're going to find your data from October 2020 in reports. The moment you try and export data out of reports into Explore or into Looker Studio or some other dashboarding tool, there is going to be a retention limit applied, and that's what this is. Okay, so this only really applies to data that you pull out of reports into Explore or into a dashboarding tool like Looker Studio. This is important. This might be the first one you want to update in terms of settings. Okay, I'm going to save that. Feel free to fire away with questions and comments if you've got them. Look at us. We're almost done with our checklist. And the next one is data settings, data filters. Let's go there real quick. So here's data filters under data settings. This is, I will just tell you, annoying. You might remember a moment ago, we added a couple of IP addresses. We added these IP addresses. We told Google, hey, this is us. This is our internal traffic. We already did this step, but Google is asking us to take one step further and say, hey, any internal traffic, are you just testing that, or do you want to make it active? Yes, I want to make it active. I don't know why there's an extra step here, but we have to go to this data filters, scroll down, hit active, save. Yes, activate the filter. It's no longer testing, it's active. Data filters, make sure this is active, and you will actually filter those IP addresses that you added 5 minutes ago. That's an important step as well. Again, I don't know why they separate those out into two different steps, but there you are. I'm not going to cover it in this, but know that you can update your channel definitions. If we just take a quick peek here, Google has actually provided us with a number of new channels in here, including, we never had paid video before as a default, or organic social versus paid social. This is nice. So Google's looking for these definitions here based on a combination of UTM source and UTM medium primarily. Just know that they're collecting those, or they're populating these channels based upon UTM source and medium. They do provide channel definitions. If you go to Google and search for Google channel definitions, you can find it. I'll also include a link to that in the description of this video. But you can also create a separate channel group. You can create up to 2 custom, not default, but 2 custom channel groups. I'm not sure why 2. Maybe your agency has one. Maybe your internal marketing team has one that's unique to them. But just know that you can create 2 channel groups. Okay. What else do we have here? We are down to, we did this one. We activated that. The last one I've got here for you in this, look at all that green, that's beautiful. The last one I've got here for you is integrations, okay? So in integrations, they're all the way down here. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see this, but you can see under property, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see product links, okay? These are integrations. That's what I'm calling product links integrations, okay? So you might, if you have a Google Ads account, want to connect that so that your Google Ads data will be able to populate in reports, and you can use some of your data to populate in Google Ads, etc. BigQuery will become a thing for sure. That is Google's data warehousing product. It'll come into play, especially when we want to back up our data or store it. We'll cover that in a separate video for sure, but this is going to be a product you're probably going to want to check out if you haven't checked it out before. This particular client, we're not going to do BigQuery just yet. They don't have a Google Ads account, but they do have a Search Console account. So let's go connect that, because we can actually bring in Search Console data into Google Analytics 4 if we do so. So I'm going to go find their account. I've got to choose from my accounts here. Let's go find them. There they are right there. I'm going to confirm that I want to add them. There, they're added. Yes, yes. Connect to the web stream. That's the one. Hit next. Submit. I'm moving somewhat quickly, but you can see the link has been created. I now have my Search Console account connected to my Google Analytics 4. The world is a wonderful place. Look at us. We just connected it and we've got all green. Why would we want to do that? As I noted, eventually when this property starts collecting data, we will be able to add reports for Search Console. There's nothing populating here yet because we just added the tracking code via Google Tag Manager just a moment ago. But now we will have Search Console data. If I go down to Library and Reports, and it'll take a moment here to load up some cards. You see these cards here. Let me zoom out just a little bit so we can see that better. You can see there are some cards for life cycle, acquisition, engagement, monetization, retention. Hey, that's the same card right there. And there's also user, demographics, tech. That corresponds to these here. If I publish my Search Console report, now I will have Search Console reporting in GA4. Pretty simple. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't connect my Search Console account. Okay, so that is just one quick example of how we can make sure that we are tracking from a solid foundation from the start. I highly advise you to check out that document. Again, you can find it at this link. I'll also put it down in the description of the video so you can find it. Make a copy. You can use it to your heart's content. I wish you good luck. Thanks very much.